Good evening. This is the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Tuesday, June 17th. 2025, 5 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Ms. Mayo to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
All right.
Ms. Mayo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Jim Sherwin will not be at tonight's meeting. And Mr. Franzuto will be returning in several minutes. Have not heard from Mr. DeCosta. Draft minutes of June 3rd, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Any suggestions for revisions or an approval through? The motion to approve.
Motion to approve as is.
I second.
Okay. Motion is made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Ms. Mayo to approve the draft minutes of June 3rd, 2025. All in favor, Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto? I'm sorry, Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Ms. Mayo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Do we have any notes or representation from Marine Department?
Does not go you.
Natural Resources Report, Tara Riley, please.
Okay. We have, this was our first week where we started our June, water quality, so we're out there, testing for harmful algae blooms in the ponds and running them through our flow cam. They get reported out every Friday afternoon, on a weekly basis through the end of October, I believe. I think last Friday it was just my comment and Tom Nevers pond. We started our regular harbor water quality and Great Pond water quality as well this week. That's ongoing until tomorrow. And that happens every 2 weeks throughout the summer. Ponds are sampled, harbors are sampled twice a month, ponds are sampled once a month. Today, we started putting out spat bags at the end of May to monitor the bay scallop spawning activity. They recruit in these bags and they soak out there for 6 weeks, and we go out there every 2 weeks and put new bags out. And so today was the first day that the first set of bags came in, and I didn't see Joe before I left today, but I have a feeling that there probably wasn't anything in them. Harbor temp's still pretty low, so. Oyster farmers are also usually first to let us know if there's bay scallop spat recruitment on their gear, and so they haven't seen anything yet either. So stay tuned for that. And then we are knee deep in our spawns. We had an oyster spawn beginning of the season, and that has moved outside now. It's in our outside system and was sieved yesterday, so that's moving up. We are having our third bay scallop spawn tomorrow. We had one last week. We released one also last week, and the one that we have in there now is around 40 million bay scallop larvae. We are spawning again tomorrow. Everything seems like ripe and ready, so we try to take advantage of them. Well, it's easy for them to release eggs. Today we were also out in Second Bend. We did 5 dive surveys, anticipating our first release of the season, which will happen next week. We participated in the Coastal Conference last week. I presented the eelgrass management plan. It was, for those of you that weren't there, is mostly like a lot of city and municipal regional planning going on for coastal resiliency was kind of the main theme of everything. But there was a section for local planning, and so we squeezed in the eelgrass management plan just to let people know what we had been working on, and this new exciting plan that Nantucket is getting ready to roll out. And then as you saw from your emails, we did roll out the first draft of the eelgrass management plan on Friday. It came slightly later than expected and has a very fast turnaround rate for commenting on the draft. I believe it's on the 22nd, which is Tuesday. And then there will be an opportunity also at the State of the Harbor. We're also going to be talking about the eelgrass management plan there. We are hoping to have a finalized version on July 1st, which is very aggressive, but we're trying to stick to the deadline, knowing that this is a living document and it can be altered and it does need work. It's not going to be like the harbor plan or the shellfish management plan that took 2 or 3 years to work on and that it was like pretty well done. This is like a guide for us to use, and we need to form a working group to prioritize items and kind of work through some of the details that time didn't allow for us to do. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Tara. Questions, comments on natural resources report from the board? Just something that came to mind, we talked about diving a lot, and you are actually in on a lot of these dives, yes. And you mentioned Second Bend, and my mind just went to years ago when a barge was there. And as children, we used to dive off of this barge. It kind of sat on the bottom, the tide came up around the barge, but that barge had a huge anchor. That was literally at low tide, a foot off of the surface. I'm gonna imagine that when the barge was removed, that maybe the anchor was taken with it. But it's making me think about the current debris and hazard removal being undertaken. And throughout your dives, have you noticed anything? I imagine if you have like a little hidden blocks that were used for moorings or something like that, that you would be in collaboration in if it were a hazard, at least to have it to add it to the list.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't seen anything like that in Second Bend at all. But we are doing like, just like 5 snapshots of the bend, but we do occasionally do what we call scouting, where we get pulled behind the boat holding these wings so you can cover a large area of the harbor and visually take a look at the bottom while the boat is pulling you. And that's a great way to scout seed, but I think it would be a great way to look for debris too, if you had an idea of where it was, if you can't see it in an aerial. But I haven't seen anything like that, but certainly if we do, we usually like buoy something if it's big enough, just to note what it is, and we would let Sheila know, and I know NSA is working on that too.
I would imagine by now it would have been hit, or a scalper would have hung up on it or something like that, so I'm just gonna assume that it was removed from the barge, removed. So good to hear, and we all know the collaboration is good. State of the harbor date and time, just to announce it to the public at this meeting. I know it's advertised well.
To take a peek real quick.
Just right. Announce it.
Okay.
Anything else for natural resources report?
No. Oh, here it is. Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Great Harbor Yacht Club.
So that is the State of the Harbor. I don't say address.
State of the
Harbor Forum.
The featured presentation, eelgrass restoration efforts in Nantucket Harbor, successes and challenges. We're going to present the plan with Urban Harbors Institute, and there'll be a Q&A with the presenters, and then there will be a Nantucket Harbor Plan update as well. And for those interested, drinks and raw bar to follow.
Okay, and to reiterate, that's July 15th, 4:30 to 6:30 at the Great Harbor Yacht Club. Yes.
Yes.
And anybody trying to get on, Peter?
Diane, she's on now,
Okay, thank you.
and Dave is on now too.
Old business, I'm sorry, Tara, we kept this on here. If we don't need to, just let us know.
No, I'm glad you did. We just did the final amendments. We got some back from Libby and town council, and we're currently looking for a date in their schedule they requested the clean version. They requested a summary of the changes, and then they were going to look at their schedule and see when we could put it on, because there will be a small presentation needed to go with it.
And we've clarified the years for competition.
Clarified the years for conch fishing, so Nantucket Harbor will be closed on even years, so that will allow Dan to finish out his year, and Nantucket Harbor will be closed on odd years.
Opposite of what it used to be. I would imagine you don't see any issue with that.
No, I think it's fine. I think it would be an issue if we were fishing the same harbor twice in like 2 years.
Okay. Board members, anything on shellfish regulations? Connecticut ditch, dredging to enhance improving herring runs. This was subject brought up by Mr. DeCosta. We've had some discussion on it. Not quite sure where we'll go with it. Hopefully it's included in part of the dredge plan at least, and somewhere in the future.
Mr. Chairman,
Some work will be done on this. Mr. Franzuto may have some information. Thank you. Pete?
yeah, it's going to be included in the harbor plan under water quality, under fisheries, and under dredging.
Great.
Just a small factoid. Nat Philbrick, in his new book about Abram Quarry, stated that they opened that ditch in 1665 to enhance the fisheries and create a salt meadow. So I don't think you can argue with 1665 too much.
Yeah, gosh, that's predates the Erie Canal. I'm saying that because I imagine it was hand dug in 1665. Okay, thank you. I was reading some discussion on the vineyard about trying to improve herring runs over there as well. That they've seen a lack thereof at the ponds that they expect them at. Any information that you would have to add
I
at
don't
this moment, Karen?
have any information. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I have a document from town meeting in 1882 that talked about Long Pond and Mattocket Ditch. And I'm happy to scan and pass around if people are interested, but I haven't come across too many documents.
Okay,
Well, I know NBI funded a couple of years in a row a person doing research on herring. Did they ever contact you?
I don't remember hearing about that.
Who was doing it?
The Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative, which is all the conservation organizations together.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
They fund small research grants for grad students, and professors. And
Yeah, I'd like to have a copy of that if it wouldn't be too much trouble.
Yeah, no worries.
Likewise.
Bring one.
might as well. I'm sure Bob would probably be interested. I am as well. So thank you for that. I'm just you know, well, I'm curious as well about how the herring are affected if they're not coming in. Do they find other places to go? Does it affect their population? Um, you know, if we improve, the ditch, um, you know, will they return? That, I suppose that's a projection, that would be hard to say, but, and are we opening our ponds during the time when it's beneficial to herring run? I think that's what the discussion was on the vineyard. They'd opened rather late and people had felt, the herring had come and gone, and, so the pond opening there was not advantageous to the herring. I know there are guidelines to the dates that we can open our ponds. That may not coincide with that, I'm not sure that all information that would, I guess, be good to know to help with this. Of course, the ditch, would be open all the time and available for if it or deep enough, I guess. Any other,
I mean, off the land bank, I'll say, pier that walks out behind Mattocket Marine, at high tide, the water probably 4 feet deep. And, obviously, depends on what the tide is and the moon, it could be a lot worse at low tides.
like, down to under a foot?
I haven't, I think under a foot, I'll go out there for a little tide and take a look. But the water just does not flow out of the ditch
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Second Bridge. Which means First Bridge, typically.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else? On the Mattocket ditch? We kept this on here as well. Maybe Mr. Fonzuto has some information, the recreational shellfish permit button. Our preference in preserving the original design. Any more discussion on this at this point?
Yes, so,
Scott?
so this, the people that have the buttons are at the police station. And who do they roll up into, the police chief?
What? I'm sorry?
So the lady that hands out, or the person that hands out the permits for, Shellfish, she rolls up obviously to the police chief.
Right, right. The permit, yeah, the licensing agent, Amy Baxter.
Okay, because I had an opportunity to do horseshoe crab research with Jody, the town police chief. Who seemed like a nice lady, and I have no problem approaching her about trying to go back. I have nothing to lose. I'm not
Yeah.
a commercial fisherman, and get to go back the old way. You'd like me to try that?
Well, let's check in with Mr. Franzuto. I forget if at the last meeting, you said you were going to research this further.
Well, I think that
You took a lot at the last meeting, so I'm not trying to put this on your shoulders. Scott's offering.
no. I think I think the bigger discussion is, does Natural Resources want to sell the permits? And that's a discussion that we have to have with Jeff and his folks. And if they want to or are able to, then we could take over the the selling, the buying of the new buttons, the redesign, sending sending one of my old buttons to the new distributor, who what, with any changes that you want to make. But I think that's the bigger issue. If Natural Resources wants to sell them at their location. Tara, do you have is there a person that sits in the entryway there that greets the public, or is like an administrative assistant type of person?
Yes.
All right, so again, I think that's a discussion we have to have with Jeff and see if he wants to take that on. If not, then I think we need to maybe use the diplomatic route with Scott and the police chief, just saying that, hey, this kind of caught everybody by surprise, and natural resources could and should be involved. And we'd like to, for the next upcoming run for next year, we'd like to go back to the old button, and we use the diplomatic approach. But
Mr. Chairman,
Peter?
I don't understand why we have to have NRD take on the sale of the permits just to change the design.
oh, I'm not saying it does, Peter. What I'm saying is that that was what was put back in my face,
Right,
that if natural resources was so compelled that this button was not appropriate, then they should take over the sales. And so I'm just saying it begs the question that we have to have amongst ourselves, that we either agree or disagree with whether natural resources should be selling them, and then we move forward with the redesign one way or the other. Peter, I'm not saying they're tied
okay,
together. Yeah.
okay. Well, I say we work Scott's connection.
Yes.
And I also think, I don't think, I honestly believe that if they were sold out of natural resources, the exchange of information to the permit holders and any new people getting a license for the first time, I think that information would be far better distributed through natural resources, their folks, because they're going to say the right words and hand out the right paperwork and do updates, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's just my plug for natural resources doing it, but that's totally up to Jeff and his group.
Okay,
I guess what I'll do is I'll go over to have a friendly conversation, bring a few of the buttons so they can see the history of it. And just see if we can at least get that changed.
I'm happy to go with you. I mean, I think it's
Okay.
through you. I think
Great.
it's important, this isn't just a button, it's the history and culture, tradition of base golfing. And I think that got lost when they tried to take away the Marine Department label on there. And I think that you can also easily, in this day and age, go back to the same design. And I don't think NRD needs to take it on unless Jeff and Lisa think that that's something that office space can handle. I know that there's a set of stairs there and it's not super accessible like the police department is. So I think there's some things to consider, but I'm also happy to go with you to talk about the button.
I'll see when she's
But-
available.
but-
Send me an email.
Can I say one more thing about that? That's fantastic. And I think, whatever the decision on who sells them, whichever way that goes, I think it's great. But I think it also gives Tara the opportunity to possibly talk to these people who are doing the actual issuing of the permit, and make sure that they have good, new, up-to-date, succinct, clear information about shellfishing. I'm not saying that I don't know I guess I'm ignorant in the fact that I don't know what the paper permit looks like currently. And like Peter has pointed out a couple times, is the fact that the back of the permit had all of the stuff on there that needs to be read by the permit holder, or at least should. And then we could update that, so we would be getting better information out there with whoever sells the permit. And I'm looking at the button again, and I don't mean to belabor this, but this button's from 2004, and really the only change to this button is that the words Marine Department or Marine Dep need to be taken off there. It says Town of Nantucket, permit must be worn while taking shellfish and eels. That might be a change, Tara. And it's got the expiration date.
honestly, Marine Department should be replaced with Natural Resources Department. So that people can look at their button right away and be aware. Maybe that would raise a flag. Okay, if I need more information, it comes from Natural Resources Department. and who is in enforcement in this?
Most
Enforcement-
definitely, most
enforcement
definitely.
is through Natural Resources Department as well, so but I believe that the convenience of going there to buy them, where we currently buy them at the police station, should remain. I don't think they should be offended by us wanting this, button to look more authentic. And, as far as updating what is received by, the permit buyer, Scott, while you're there,
I'll grab
what
everything I
do
can.
they have for paperwork that they're handing out, and let's see if it needs to be updated.
There we go. There we go. It's the best of
Okay.
both worlds. Then.
Okay, thank you, Scott, for stepping up on that, and Tara for being, willing to participate as well. Thank you. Any more discussion?
I have one more. I was just gonna say that Jody hasn't been through the hatchery yet, and I know that she was wanting to, so we could invite the staff
Happy-
down there
Mm.
to, show them what we do, and then maybe there might be a renewed
Well, the fact
appreciation.
she's been doing the horseshoe crab research with conservation, and she
Mhm.
enjoyed it, and we had a great conversation, so, she's open to people, listen to people.
Mhm.
Good.
Great, thank you. Okay,
Can I make a comment on the shellfish?
please do, Diane Lang.
Um, on the town of Nantucket website, it says it's good from October to March. And a big question people have asked me, and I don't know the answer is, what about April to September?
The website.
I believe that those dates are referring to scallops only. Sarah?
Yeah, the dates on there, if it says October to March, then that is for the bay scallop season, for recreational season. Other shellfish are open, and I believe when you get your button, they hand out, a little pamphlet with the regulations that tell you what the other seasons are for the other shellfish.
Okay, so this is something that for
It's
the,
confusing, so
we need some clarification
it's definitely, thank you.
because honestly, this button is probably, 95% used for recreational scalloping and, so, to help with clarification, as we just spoke about, the paperwork that's handed out when receiving, the permit, should have an explanation of dates, that it's good for an entire year for all of the shellfish that the permit covers, so. Thank you, Diane, and we will do our best to make this easier for the public to understand.
Thank you.
You know what? I'm looking at the website. She's exactly right. It says duration, October 1 to March 31st, Wednesday to Sunday only, which also only refers to bay scallops. And this is under Town of Nantucket shellfish permit. So that we need to get that changed.
All right, it sounds like there's actually a lot of work to do with this, but somebody in the know can probably get through it fairly simply. Okay, anything else on the button? Who thought there'd be so much discussion on a button? But it's very important, so wonderful. Next up on old business, update on progress for potential intertidal oyster farming. Not just for Sean Fitzgibbon, but for other growers as well. Mr. Brace and I thought it was just to have this on the agenda. And if the board doesn't mind, I'd like to read some correspondence that has taken place between Mr. Carlson, Mr. Fitzgibbon. Tara has been connected with this, Joe Manella and myself, but the rest of the board has not. The board mind if I take about 5 to 10 minutes to go through this? This is, I believe, well, May 27th from Mr. Fitzgibbon to Mr. Carlson, Tara Riley, Joe Manoa, and myself. Hello, all. Is there any update or information in regards to a future tidal grow area, Wyers Point and north along the shore of Co-2? If not, any other area that may be approvable, please let me know what is possible. Or if your departments need any further information to begin a preliminary survey. The numerous advantages gained from a tidal grow site are clear and should be recognized as necessary for all of the farmers on island. Also now more than ever, I am highly concerned about the bird deterrent issue we are all facing. The only 100% effective solution that the Department of Marine Fisheries confirms is the use of bottom gear set effectively in tidal areas. What will happen if Massachusetts, this is a question, I'm sorry, what will happen if Massachusetts decides to follow New Hampshire in its change in policy towards floating gear farms, requiring harvestable stock to be moved into bottom gear for a 10-day purge before legal harvest? May 30th response from Mr. Carlson. Hello, Sean. Hope you're well and your season is going well. We are reaching out to the trustees and potentially the Conservation Foundation in regard to this area and the size, the feel appropriate, or any other similar areas along their property. In addition, confirming that they do not object to this activity or on or adjacent to their property. We have concerns about bird deterrence and are reaching out to similar agencies in New Hampshire to fully understand their rules and situation. We're reviewing all eelgrass data for this area, understanding that the plan is to be landward of any eelgrass beds. We will let you know of our results of our discussions with the trustees from the Nantucket Conservation Foundation once complete. We're hoping to have finalized these discussions in the next couple of weeks. Thank you. Okay, bear with me. Please.
Thanks, Bill.
June 10th from Mr. Fitzgibbon to same recipient, Mr. Carlson, Manella, myself, Diane Lang, and Tom Dixon this time around. Looks like Tara was not included in this. Title site. Hello, all. Has there been any conversations or action towards a potential title site? This is year 3 for me working the grant, and it is increasingly clear that an adequate intertidal site is the most important and beneficial aspect for maintaining an oyster farm here on Nantucket. Divesting from floating gear and moving towards bottom gear seems to be the most effective and safest solution for the unsolved bird deterrent issue. Please let me know. Response from Mr. Carlson. Good morning, everyone. I spoke with the Coastal Projects manager from the trustees of the reservations on Tuesday regarding their potential use of oyster castles, reef balls, and the future of aquaculture in this area. In our discussion, she believed that a broader discussion with their leadership team would be needed. We are actively scheduling this discussion. Okay, and so Mr. Brace and I decided to put this on the agenda simply to update, and also Mr. Fitzgibbon would like to do his best to move forward. And honestly, I would love to see in writing from the proper authoritative person the chain of events of how these chain of events take place, because Mr. Fitzgibbon also spoke with Tom Dixon. Tom Dixon said the select board would need an official recommendation from this board, or that would be helpful for him to move forward with what he is doing in asking Natural Resources Department to move forward with his request. If you're all following me with that. So did you all get a chance to read the response to this being on the agenda from Mr. Carlson? I'm gonna read it anyway. So Mr. Carlson sent out this morning to all of us. Hello, everyone. In reviewing the agenda for tonight's meeting, I saw a discussion item on an update on progress toward an intertidal site for aquaculture. There were no materials provided from anyone else, so I wanted to provide a brief update as I am not able to attend this evening. As previously discussed, intertidal sites abut land owned by private owners, and their authorization is needed as a first step. This specific site being suggested abuts land owned by the trustees of reservations. We have engaged the trustees and had discussions in the last week about potential aquaculture and their resiliency plans in that area. The trustees are pulling together the group of people from their end who need to be involved in that decision-making process. And once assembled, we'll be meeting with the town to have those discussions. We will happily let you know when that has occurred and the result. If there are additional thoughts, questions, or information, it is helpful to get them in advance of meetings. Simply labeling a broad topic as a discussion item without materials makes it difficult for the public and staff to anticipate what the discussion will entail. Thank you. So I simply responded that since Mr. Carlson has made us aware that we need to have a better explanation on our agenda items. And each time Mr. Brace and I go over the agenda, we do look at that agenda item and try to come up with, well, what's the best way to explain this without using too many words, so that the public and staff understand what we intend to discuss. So I basically explain that we do take into consideration forming a more explanatory description on each agenda item. With this particular item, as it has been a while and there have been several email exchanges between Sean and yourself, I simply thought it would be fair to the board to share those exchanges. So simply put, it will be an update on progress as is stated on the agenda. I don't believe the discussion will be lengthy, and the most we will do is possibly compile some questions for you that can be answered in the future at your convenience. Thank you. I took it upon myself to call Diane, and it sounds like the only thing needed from trustees of reservations is a simple nod. Of course, a letter of support would be helpful. They have already given Mr. Fitzgibbon the nod, sounds like up to a year ago. Anything intertidal is really not in their jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction goes down to the high tide mark. Certainly, you know, respectful to get their approval, but approval, come to find out, is really not the correct word to be used. They're not in the position to allow or disallow intertidal farming. And from what the trustees is familiar with oyster farming is in other towns like Wellfleet and Duxbury, all they do is intertidal. So their gear is open to, you know, it's on dry land for during low tide. My concern, I guess, with this was, well, isn't this leaving it even more vulnerable to the cormorant activity, which is what is taking place with the floating gear in the middle of Walnut Harbor? And to learn a little more about cormorants, I guess the reason they're hanging out on that gear is for two reasons. They're either fishing for food or they're drying their feathers. I guess they're one of the only birds that do not have oily feathers, so their feathers actually absorb water, and they're hanging out there holding their wings open and drying themselves off. But of course, meantime, while they're hanging out there, they're defecating right on top of oyster cages. And I'm not any specialist at this. I'm simply gaining this information as we go along here. And as we all remember, there were, I believe, 3 instances last summer with the health department and, some oysters, having some contamination and some people getting sick. And, it's probably safe to say that, the cormorant defecation could have something to do with that. And, so I was kind of questioning with, this gear being, exposed during low tide, well, will the cormorants be landing there? And it sounds like it's highly unlikely, or it's less likely than them landing on the gear that's floating in the water. They do dry themselves, as well on the beach, or on something that's floating in the water. But it sounds like Wellfleet and Duxbury have had, good, results with the way they work their oyster farming intertidal. At this point, I will leave it at that, and, except it's just my personal feeling that, what Mr. Fitzgibbon is asking for here, I had attended the growers meeting with all the growers, held by, Mr. Carlson and, Mr. Manella, and, all the other growers seem to be interested if space like this were to open up to them for year-round use, they would probably take advantage of it. So, and as we all know, Mr. Fitzgibbon was mistaken, that his overwintering site was able to be used, year-round, and he was removed from doing that last season. And, it seemed to him was a more beneficial way of growing his product. And so unless I am convinced otherwise, I don't see why this can't move forward in a more progressive manner.
My biggest question, what's the availability of space? How much, if everybody was to shift there right now, could it handle everything?
I don't know if that question
Yeah,
can
so-
be answered at this point. Tara, please.
I'm not gonna answer a question, but I think there's a lot of harbor planning going on right now and a lot of conversations about mixed use. And I think, trying to make sure that everybody understands what's entailed in a commercial operation versus a restoration project. I heard you mention castles and reef balls, and this is not a castle and reef ball situation. This is a private commercial operation. I think there's room for both, but I want to make sure that people can distinguish between what it is that is being asked. So, this isn't, like I said, restoration for the greater good of the public. This is, putting private oysters in, which will also filter the water and provide a benefit. But we want to make sure that all those like everybody's on the same page and they understand what the impact could be, or, good or bad.
Mr. Chairman,
Just a second, Dave, just to clarify, the castles and reef balls were mentioned by Jeff, Mr. Carlson.
I think,
And
that was mentioned by the trustees to Jeff. And so that was the confusion in some of the conversations that we had. So we're all just trying to get on the same page to make sure that what is being asked is understood.
Okay. Resilience was also mentioned, and this particular area is probably a mile from the north shore of Cotuh, in distance from harbor to Cotuh, so it's not an area that's in concern of any breaching. Resilience in trustees, and Ms. Lang can answer it probably better than me, but we do know the most vulnerable spot is at Cosqueta Pond. And where they're considering some resilience action. But anyhow, um. Like I said before, you know, I feel that all the information should be transparent. And so that we can comfortably move along with this. Mr. Franzuto?
Yeah, a couple of things. You know, Tara's completely right about competing uses and just uses in general. The other thing, well, I'm actually actively engaged in doing work up in Wellfleet for their oyster operation, for their commercial oyster operation, and that they service a lot of those grants with four wheelers and trailers and trucks. I mean, they also have a 6 foot tide cycle, so uh, it's considerably different than Nantucket with a 3 foot tide cycle. And so my point is you know how the access to that um, site, and more importantly, I think that if you approve this, or if we recommend approval, or if the trustees say this is something that they would allow in their on their property or adjacent to their property, you also have to think about how many other Terra, 6, 7, 8 more growers. This is going to open up the door that if this is such a good idea, then these other guys are going to need to be afforded that same opportunity. And uh, I don't know that the site is big enough to do that. So I think there's more to this than just saying to him, "Yeah, you can do this with everybody's blessing." I think you got to look at all of the shellfish uh, growers. Um, you know, where do we go when there's three more of them sitting in the room saying, "Hey, I want to amend my permit so I can use this intertidal zone." I think there's a bigger issues and discussions here than the one we're having. I'd like to hear if Miss Lang has any insight as to where or what they think should and shouldn't be doing up there.
Just
Sure, I'll be happy to comment.
Diane, one minute, please.
Sure.
I just wanna, thank Dave, because those are all good points. And that's what we're here to do, try to get to, you
Right.
know, the right place here, so thanks. Diane?
Sure. So, the letter that you read from Jeff, I'm not sure. I think he's coming from the conversations that were had more so regarding the consultants that the trustees and Nantucket Conservation hired regarding some resilient applications that we could look at. The sites that were examined for the possibilities of oyster reef and that type of resilience project were only at Hallover Pond and the east beach at Cascada Pond. So not near where Mr. Fitzgibbon is proposing. In addition to those, they are also looking at some restoration for the Cascada Woods Trail. The trustees, and I as the manager have had conversations with Sean. We are fully, supporting this, but we know that Sean is not working on any resilience, program. He's not being contracted to put in oyster reefs, so there's a little bit of a confusion there. We know that Sean is a commercial oyster farmer and that his intent is to have a commercial farm. And I know there is also a license for a shellfish farm in Cascada Pond. Now, I think we all know that if someone holds a license in Cascada Pond, there would not be someone else can't move in. So once you know the laws more than I do about the licensing projects, and once someone's given the rights to a certain area, then there can not be any argument made from other oyster farmers if they want the same rights. They have to go about the same process to get a license over a certain acreage of land. And it is limited. There's an area I know over on the entrance of Pulpus Harbor. It's taken, no one else can move in, so that's just business. So the trustees, it sounds, I think that Jeff is correct. I think that he would want to have, a higher level of management above myself to say, we have no issues here. And they only just chatted briefly last week at the coastal conference. And so I'm sending this up the flagpole and telling our managers that we should meet as soon as possible, just so we are on the same page and we can say, unequivocally that there is no problem with this type of commercial business off of our shores. Does that answer some of the questions?
Yeah, except for, but probably not really a question for you, well, except for if access were to begin with, vehicles versus boats. Obviously, at high tide, a vehicle can't get down there at high tide,
Well, yeah, so just being familiar with Sean's efforts in the harbor for the past 4 or 5 years. Sean's efforts have been predominantly via boat out of Pulpus Harbor. Occasionally, he would knowingly at a low tide drive over to the harbor edge if he needed to retrieve or service any of the winter over shellfish bags that he had. And it's the same for everyone, we can't give anyone special access. If there's no access, there's no access. And I think that my experience with Sean is that he's fully aware of what access is. He knows code 2 very well, and he knows how to get to his business.
thank you.
I just had a question for you, Diane, just for my knowledge, because it's something that I was thinking about with that area that's under question is in regards to nesting birds, is that a concern of having nesting birds in the vicinity? And B, power washing is allowed on the leases as long as you're within your lease bounds. Would that also be an issue in this area?
In my experience here, I would say no. I know where he's looking, and I would say that outside of a occasional Canada goose pair, there's no habitat for plovers. Oyster catchers have moved over to the sound side for the most part. There's 2 pairs of oyster catchers that nest on the inlet. However, the increased number of days that we have flooding of the entire glades has really limited any type of success for those birds. So we have never had a plover nest there. Oyster catchers, a gull or 2 at Wires Point, and really there's the high tide is right up to the cedars. In fact, it's killing off cedars.
Thank you,
And
Diane.
power washing, that's not an issue on the land?
I'm not familiar with what that would entail, but I would say it's, are they using salt water or pumping salt water through a system somehow, gas powered pumps? I mean, I would have to know a little bit more about what that looks like.
Okay.
I don't see that it would be an issue. I mean, is that something that happens daily? Do you know?
I mean, I think it's just a routine practice to remove fouling from cages and bags to,
Mhm.
some people do it off-site, but I think the majority of the larger farms do it on-site, and I think
Mhm.
the noise can be, like it could last for a long time, depending
I
on
see, yeah,
how long it is, and there is, some debris that goes back into the water or on land. But
Yeah.
again, like everybody has their own way of dealing with fouling, and power washing isn't the only way to deal with it.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to ask the question because it is a concern that we talk about when we talk about abutters and people with the shallow water leases over in Pulpus Harbor. That sound can be relentless, if it's just one of those concerns of being a good neighbor. And the trustee, that land over there, obviously there aren't neighbors there, but there are people trying to enjoy nature. And I just wanted to just ask that question because the power washing is written into our regulations is okay as long as you are within your lease. And that was,
Mhm.
that's just one of those things that we need to have a conversation about to make sure that everybody understands what sort of activity could happen on a lease.
Sure, thank you. I know that the few seasons that Sean had his bags over on the other side, I don't believe he ever did power washing. His system was just all manually turning the bags over, and but I don't see power washing being any worse than the power boats that are buzzing around doing circles with their 350 horsepower engines on the back of their boat. So I don't see it as being any worse.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank
It
you.
would probably be wise to actually witness the power washing.
Agreed.
It's a good question from Tara, and the only thing you didn't answer, Tara, was do they use salt water?
I assume so. I don't know
Yeah.
what else it would be.
Well, they'd have to have a huge tank of fresh water if they were not using salt water, so I
Yeah.
imagine they're just circulating up salt water. I have seen it from afar. It seems like quite an operation. Is that mainly what they have their little barge for? Is to get the gear up on the barge and then pressure wash it on the barge?
Yeah,
And I'm sure they use the barge for plenty of other things, but it, some of their equipment can be loud. And as Tara said, they do spend a lot of time at it. It could be almost an all-day process. Um, uh, Mr. Fitzgibbon may not use power washing at all, but in this request, I think it's only fair. Even though this is Mr. Fitzgibbon's request, it's only fair to consider the other farmers in having the same opportunity as he is asking for. And it brings me back to the original shallow water site as to why, it just seems like a much simpler way of doing this would be to allow the current shallow water site to be used year round. But maybe there's more public activity nearby there. I'd have to look on the map. I know a lot of people, there's access over to the Cascade Bluff, and people spend the day over there lounging and whatever. Probably more people go there than do over to the CO2 side of Cascada. So where Mr. Fitzgibbon is making this request for, what do we call it, inside of Wyers Point? How do we name this area that you're asking, Mr. Fitzgibbon?
So yeah, the northeast side of Wyers Point.
Okay. Okay, I don't want to, exhaust our evening on this. I guess there's more information needed and research to be done. It's the how this chain of events takes place and how it can be streamlined.
Well,
Dave?
yeah, from what I heard from Miss Lang is they still have to make a decision at a high level of their organization, and that, you know, but I too don't want the other growers to uh, not have the same opportunity uh, as this if this becomes the norm. So I think, you know, I think what Jeff said in his email is probably pretty close. He's waiting for the trustees to weigh in at a high level of acceptance, and you know, we'll just keep working through this. But
Okay, the only difference I see is, and I could be wrong, is the only lease that's different than where Mr. Fitzgibbon currently is the Pocomo lease. And then, of course, Cascade Pond, but we know there's no more oystering taking place in Cascade Pond. It is changed to cohog farming, but so how that has any difference in it, I'm not sure, but anything else from the board on this? Mr. Fitzgibbon? I'll give you a chance to,
Sure, just to,
wanna come right up to the table, thanks.
thank you. Just to touch right on Mr. Franzuto's point, currently Emil with the Pocomo site works intertidally. Simon works intertidally, and Mac Wraith is Simon's partner, works all his gear off of Simon's intertidal site. So the only two farmers left, not including Jamie Marks and Cascada, that don't have access to anything shallow water or intertidal would be Matt Herr and myself. So I agree that all the farmers should be given all the same opportunity. And it's with that, they can do what they will. There's no real advantage. You know, you could have something and not do much with it, but if half of the team gets a home court advantage and the other half is kind of struggling, that's where I've been trying to, you know, raise the question of it is for all of us, right?
Okay, so now I feel as though I have something new to understand. I did not realize that Simon and Max already have intertidal.
They've been working that site.
And where is that location?
It's a 2 acre strip, just northwest of Emil's site, that they share the.
So it's
same-
around the point, Pocomo Point.
Right when you come out of Pulpus Harbor and you see the old sunken barge that was left there, and that's in the middle of Emil's site where he has floating bags, and the rest of it's all on the bottom. Simon's acreage is immediately adjacent to that towards Pocomo Point, before you cross the other Oneama Creek. It's Medawi Creek and then Oneama Creek, the two creeks that come out from that marsh, kind of border that property,
And
roughly.
unlike the Cascada intertidal area, this one's year round.
Yeah, oh yeah, they work that year round, certainly. I believe Simon takes most of his gear out of there during the winter because all of his site goes dry at low tide, whereas Emil's still remains at the most dead low tides, about 6 inches deep. On like a really big moon tide, it'll dry right out, but in the last year, he's really started utilizing and seeing the advantages of working with bottom trays that hold the oysters, and you can stack them vertically so that they become more exposed during low tide. So I've been watching him shift from just free range oystering to the advantages of these bottom trays. I mean, I won't swear anything by Simon's operations, but we've watched them work for almost 15 years out of that site, and that's the primary of their farm work is done there. The deep water site is done for a lot of pressure washing, defouling purposes where they keep their seed, and obviously at that high tide, I mean, they have that acreage, they're gonna utilize it, they do work out there, but the majority of their work comes out of that 2 acre site. So they're very active over there, that's, without getting into financials, that's where they make their money. 100%, and their ability to do so comes from working off that kind of a access, safe, easy, beneficial to the crop of oysters in very many ways.
And your request north of Wyers Point is 2 acres
I would be
for
really,
yourself?
I would be really happy with anything. I would feel 2 acres would be an abundance of space. It would be amazing to work with. I would be happy to trade 2 acres of the deep water. Again, not asking for more than what's been allotted or is legally allotted or we all have.
Well, sorry to keep cutting you off, but so is Simon's spot in Pocomo 2 acres?
I believe when the town transferred that site to Simon, he lost 2 of his deep water acres. Back in 2013 or something, that's when that happened.
Tara, is there a detailed map that shows every acreage and who leases that acreage?
I think that would be very helpful.
I think
See
we
that
all
spread
need to
out,
have
look
one
at
of
the
those
area
in
you're
front of us.
talking about.
I think we
and
said
try to
it
just
a couple years ago.
Visualize.
Pictures worth 1,000 words.
Okay, and obviously we need Mr. Carlson in on this discussion as well. Seemed as though he was asking that. Board members,
I just wanna. I guess we just need to wait for Diane. To wait for her superiors to weigh in. I mean, I don't hear anything else that we're waiting for, right?
well, DMF, at some point needs to survey if it's a new area.
Yeah, but it's just,
You
it
know,
just keeps going on and on, he keeps,
yeah,
he wants. I don't know why we're holding them up, and there are obviously people above us that are. That he has to jump through those hoops, but, it just seems like, it's all his good faith, he wants to do this. He's patient,
Mhm.
so I don't understand why we're not working to make it happen for him. He's found this site, so.
well, and as far as I'm concerned, we've learned something new. Or maybe I just have let it slip my mind, but I did not realize that, at least 3 growers have intertidal area to work with year round. And so honestly, that makes me feel like the playing field is not level. And maybe what we're asking for northeast of Wyers Point would be to only benefit two growers that do not have intertidal space. And if 2 acres is more than what they need, maybe we look into less space and talk with the growers about that, or go back to that space that is already intertidal but only used seasonally, winter over only. So anything else you'd like to add while you're here, Mr. Fitzgibbon?
Thank you all for taking time to speak about this. I know this has been a recurring topic on your agenda, and I don't need to waste anybody's time, but I'm happy to answer any other questions specifically about farming process or about anything that I've gained to understand through the last year and talking to a couple different agencies. I'd be more than happy to share that information. I don't know how it's best to reach everybody, maybe in an email. Some pictures I know are great, but just a Google map image looking at the area, you can kind of get a better understanding where and what it is. Maybe anything, I'd be more than happy to make myself available for that.
Thank you.
Just to kind of circle also just the pressure washing thing. using an intertidal site like that would be a measure to work away from pressure washing because the action of the shoreline and just drying out and then the waves hitting those bags and cages, it kept them spotless. And that is such a tremendous amount of work on the farm that every single farmer will attest to. Simon has a kid on that barge pressure washing almost every single day of the week. It's a huge amount of work. So one of the advantages that I could list where an intertidal space like that just kind of is like you're letting nature do a lot of the hard work for you. So I wouldn't be, well, I wouldn't want to use a pressure washer there. If I did, it would be out on the deep water site, just like the other guys do.
And the characteristics of, specifically any bird, but seems to be the cormorants. I mean, the deterrent issue has been an issue in the deep water areas with floating gear. What would your experience be in the intertidal area?
They don't land on those cages. Because the wave action acts as a constant deterrent. They're not gonna sit there and get splashed. And they would only be, any gear set there would only be ideally out of the water for 2 or 3 hours a day. I mean, you set it right at the line where at dead low tide, it becomes exposed, and then that's about an hour, and it's a half hour slack tide, another hour coming in, and it's flushed and covered up again. So the majority of the day in tide cycle, it would be submerged, which would not allow for any bird to land on it since there's nothing, you know, available. There's no surface area for it to touch on. In the past few years working at the hull oversight, I would attest there was never any birds that came and landed on those cages. They just don't do it. The DMF told me the same thing. They were like, that's why bird deterrents aren't required for farming gear. It's just not part of the plan. So it's really only a requirement for the floating gear. And that's kind of a separate but hand in hand part of this request is a real concern about the future of our floating farms because it's hard to want to invest into more space when there's really no solution. It would take 1-2 cases of outbreak and we're all going to be out of business very quickly. So I'm trying to look forward to farming for you know, the 10-year span of this next lease I'm about to sign, and not knowing what's coming is, you know, I don't expect anyone to know. It's just the, you know, how life is, but we can plan accordingly and look forward to it like that. If the floating gear is going to become outlawed, or we've all really struggled to find anything that works. The cormorants just, they look at the deterrents for about a week and then they just land on them anyway. They don't care. There's no lethal measures allowed on the farms. The only other realistic deterrent is sound, which we are allowed to use. You could have a sound cannon, you could have air horns, you could shoot guns off the boat, not at them, but in the air. Those are all legal. Spike strips are about the most effective deterrent on the floats, and that creates a serious hazard for the farmer and the handler. If you can imagine, if you work in an office space, just cover your desk in spike strips and then try to type around that. It's just kind of honestly. So I mean, that's what I'm putting on all my floating cages for now. So that's the only thing that I've seen effective. And we're coming into high summer harvest and volume, so I want to stay within all state compliances by far. The state did report that the 3 cases last year were excused under their site and considered something that was probably caught by chicken pate, was what they told us at the growers meeting. I'm not sure if you remember, but Carlson did report that.
It was chicken pate.
It was also on the menu at the restaurants that were included in the report. So the state no longer considers that was anything to do with oysters.
They couldn't rule it out.
Gotcha, okay.
From what I
And
understood.
access, if you had an intertidal area, would you continue to access with your boat?
100%. That's the most realistic, way to get out there.
And the other growers that have intertidal space, do you notice, or does anybody know, do they ever use a vehicle to access?
No,
Unless it's loose gear that is, you know,
yeah,
been broken loose by storm.
I mean, specifically there at Wires Point, it is open to beach four-wheel driving,
Yeah.
and I mean, it would be a real kind of, you know, wear and tear on a vehicle, but sure, driving out there sometime would be pretty convenient. However, between the Deepwater site and just how everything is, takes about 10 minutes to get out there from Pulpus Harbor, and it takes over an hour to get there from the gatehouse in Walwinet, so I would definitely, you know, keep working out on a boat.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
well,
Any other questions from the board? Comments? Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on from this item. There's nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Fitzgibbon. New business, eelgrass management plan. I'll refer immediately to Tara.
I'm not gonna go over the plan because it is a lengthy document, but I did send around a link for everyone to look at. It's also located on the Town of Nantucket's website. There's an eelgrass management page that, talks about the plan. I did print off the, recommendations that, came through. This has been like a really quick process. We, got the funding the end of January, and here we are close to the end of June. And so it's a little bit different than other town plans, because it was privately funded by the Great Harbor Yacht Club. We haven't had to go through the same meeting schedule, so we've been doing a lot of homework on our own with a small, working group, and that, work group includes UMass Boston, Urban Harbors Institute, Nantucket Land and Water Council. We invited everybody to the board to help with this working group, and these are the people that accepted to help kind of flush everything out. And we have had formal reviews of this draft using a lot of our academic advisors that we typically use, a lot of eelgrass experts, that have experience in writing these plans and also doing restoration work for different communities. So let me see, I had a few slides from sorry. Let me just go through these real quick. Okay, so real quick, the reason why we thought we needed an eelgrass management plan, it was called out in the 2009 harbor plan, also the 2012 shellfish management plan. We have been doing these benthic surveys since 2006, and we do them every fall. We just added Mattocket last year, but since 2006, there's around 44 sites in Nantucket Harbor. In 2006, the average eelgrass coverage for Nantucket Harbor was around like 33%. And in 2024, last fall, we're down around 13%. So this is just all the sites averaged together. Some places have greater than 40%. It looks beautiful. Some places are completely barren. So when you average them together over the acreage of the whole harbor, you have 13%. So it's a huge problem. We're losing a lot of eelgrass. Through this process, we've been trying to establish what the historical levels were. And so that's going to take a little bit of time because the earliest aerials were, in the early 90s and the late 80s. And so the resolution is much different than it is today. So they're not really 100% comparable. And earlier reports and surveys, we're having to try and figure out if there were even any done. So we are not under the assumption that Nantucket Harbor had 100% eelgrass coverage at any time. That would, that's not realistic, but we are trying to kind of figure out where we started. To know, like, how much was lost before 2006. And then Mattocket Harbor we did last year, and we have again a similar eelgrass coverage for the inner harbor, and then the outer Mattocket Harbor, which is kind of like the middle of Mattocket Harbor out to Eel Point, and then Tuckernuck Island have a greater percent coverage. Lots of water exchange there. So this is our baseline that we're going with, because we don't have anything besides, again, aerials from the early 90s for this. And then this is just an example of Third Bend and how it's gotten hammered since 2006. There's been a little bit more that's come back in the past 2 years, but the time to do something is now. And so through this planning process, we all decided that protection is the key for Nantucket. It's much easier to protect what you have than it is to do restoration and continually lose the eelgrass. And so we were trying to identify all the potential stressors from the past, what we have currently and in the future, things that we need to worry about, so that we can come up with prioritizing protection measures. And they span all the way from fertilizer enforcement to not anchoring in eelgrass beds, which currently you're allowed to do. So there was, a lot of work was done in identifying these stressors and listing them all out. We had a eelgrass focus weekend with a lot of our advisors. We invited all of the nonprofit organizations, anybody that wanted to come, and we all got together and brainstormed for a whole weekend about what should go in this plan and things that we should worry about. And restoration projects, only 13% of them are successful. They cost a lot of money. And so again, that's why we want to focus on protection first, not to say that we won't do restoration. We came up with a comprehensive list of stressors for eelgrass. They list all the physical stressors, chemical stressors, environmental stressors that we, like things like global warming, we don't really have a lot of, we can't really do much about. And we included contaminants of emerging concern. So if it was something that, like tire dust that was listed as a concern for the EPA, we listed it as a concern too. So 10 years down the road, it was something that we had thought of whether we do anything about it or not. This picture on the screen was taken literally 3 weeks ago by Kit Noble. And, you can just see like the scour just, right near the town dock, and right in the middle of all those bare patches is a mooring ball. And, I am grateful that the moorings are getting put back in the patches probably, but, there's a reason why all those patches are there. And so those are, again, just things that we are going to take our time with. I provided everybody with a list of recommendations. They are not in any order. They are not prioritized. They are not refined. And they are not something that, are going to be implemented tomorrow. These are totally open up for discussion and fleshing out, and keeping or throwing away. It's just what we felt like we needed. If we were going to make this plan, we were going to, include everything that we could think of. And we also consulted other towns that have eelgrass management plans, both on the East Coast and the West Coast. We talked to a lot of experts and had their input as well. And so this is the draft, and we have until the 22nd, which is next Sunday, to add your comments. You can do it on the website, or you can email me directly, or you can call me and let me know what you think. And we will, include those into the final consideration and draft moving forward. But this is a living document. We will have to form a working group, which will be an extension probably of our current working group, and invite anyone else that's interested to help kind of prioritize these and refine them. to move forward with like implementation. I know right off the bat, you know, we do have a dredge study coming up. We're gonna do it in September to compare the two different dredges. And we're gonna start, you know, looking at how we can protect, research and monitor the eelgrass moving forward so that we don't continue to lose it. If you're looking for a bright spot in that graph that I showed you, you know, although we are losing a lot of eelgrass, it appears here. It appears here from 2020 to 2024 that the rate of decline is actually slowing a bit. And this is kind of what you see when a system could possibly be stabilizing and then, you know, starting to balance out a little bit. And that's what we hope to see. But again, like, you know, only having 13-15% total eelgrass is very concerning. And most communities don't have any eelgrass. And we all know that eelgrass is linked to the bay scallop fishery. So I think it's important to have this plan and to support it moving forward in order to maintain a lot of those cultures and traditions that people kind of identify with. Questions?
You know, I think I can speak for the entire board of how important this is, and, thank you, you know, for bringing this presentation before us and, you know, looking at the graph, you know, hoping for stabilization. That's simply a projection. None of us have a crystal ball. Our eelgrass population is not to be taken for granted. And so, you know, and as to use Jeff Carlson's words, there's no silver bullet. I think there's a whole lot of connecting factors, some, as you say, out of our control, but some things are in our control. And I can only be hopeful that some outreach and education programs happen fast. I know the NSA is working on you know, doing some of that. But how do we, you know, when it comes to fertilizer and the green lawn extending right down to the beaches so close to the harbor, how do we, what do we replace that with? How do we entice the homeowner and the landscaper to do something different? I think that's a big question that we need to somehow answer and come up with a product like clover. We hear about it, but it's not taking root, unintended. So you know, I mentioned in the past a lot, and we mentioned this during the dredging planning. I still have concerns about how much sand has slumped off of our beaches and bluffs in the harbor and smothered eelgrass beds kind of forever, unless we pull it off of there. But since then, since my, you know, kind of crusade feeling about that, I kind of wonder, how would we maintain the natural, if we go and dredge an area, how soon is it gonna be that it covers back over? Because it's a natural event that's taking place that possibly also can't be controlled by man. And so thank you. Board members, something to add?
I'm glad we got more time to read it.
Right,
If you just look at the last page on 2 pages, and you just look through here, what a challenge this is, from tire dust to
yeah,
from activities people are doing, some seems like an impossible task. So we gotta figure out which way we can mitigate some of it.
Thanks, Tara.
thank you, Dave. dire dust is huge. I mean, I have dust allergies. And I go down to the South Shore and take some of the dirt roads behind Bartlett's Farm, and the way people drive just drives me crazy. The billows of dust, you can't even see yourself after a car has gone by you at that speed. And so, you travel 5 miles an hour, you barely raise any dust. And some of these things are so simply resolved, but it's a matter of respect and using common sense. Okay, there's nothing else on this at this point, at least for this phase. June 22nd. Any bright ideas, comments? Something you want to add? Get in touch with Tara.
We guys have we have a public forum where the people will be able to come and say what they think, or is it's not that type of thing?
I mean, I think because it was such an aggressive timeline with the contracts, and to roll it out with the funders, it's kind of how that happened, but I think that we're also all under the understanding that it's a living document and that it's gonna have to, be frequently, it's gonna, at least in the short term, be frequently like adjusted, and because it's not 100% finished.
Has there been any
Mm.
thought put into an area that could be dredged to get down to that silt that eelgrass will survive in? And I'm thinking of, I mean, guys can barely access Horseshed area now. It's so shoaled over there. Is there an area that you can study and kind of figure out? I mean, I know there's a lot of sand moving there. There's an entire point created there that was never there before,
I think, I mean, a large part of the conversations we've been having beyond like fertilizer and the chemical problems have to do with physical disturbance and how the harbor has changed over time with the frequency of ferries and the amount of trips that there are and the turbulence that causes entering the harbor and the areas in the Horseshed that are getting a lot of sediment plumes. And looking at things like changing the no wake zone back to the front of, the jetties, like stuff like that, that is not gonna be popular at all. Those are the things that nobody really wants to talk about, but I think we're gonna have to start talking about them in order to reduce the impact.
think about the no wake zone in Hyannis compared to Nantucket. It's not even comparable. They've miles of no wake zone there. The fast ferry goes down so far back in comparison to, the few times that I take the fast ferry. I keep an eye on that ever since we've written letters to them to please, no wake, at least back through the cut and the jetties, and they get by Cotu Point there, or that new, I call it Point 1A, and hammer down. It's hammer down, and the same coming in, they pull back well inside of the cut. Sometimes they'll wait until the cut, but a lot of times I think to myself, 15 more seconds. No, it's going slow. What are you gaining by speeding up here or remaining speeding until you slow down? But okay.
Have you gotten any negative feedback? This has all been positive.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people have laid eyes on the plan.
Okay.
So I think that once we start making, formalizing recommendations and prioritizing them,
Yeah.
however that lands, I think there'll be some people that have problems.
Although people want more moorings and, looking at Washington Street there, I can remember when the grass was so thick in Washington Street, it grew up and then laid flat on the surface. And just moving in there with your boat, you'd get fouled up so fast, crashing your top. It's like an area that even being beat on like it is with these moorings, it still continues to grow. At least where the moorings are not, there's heavy eelgrass in there, it seems, and it's almost like a nursery area for eelgrass, and it's one of our biggest mooring fields. Okay, if there's nothing else on this. Our summer schedule. First Tuesday of July and August, second Tuesday of July and August, do we wanna have the summer schedule with one meeting per month, or we wanna remain with two meetings per month? We can, always, if we go with the first Tuesday of each month, if we feel it's necessary to have a meeting the third Tuesday, we can call that at a time.
I'll be in Maine the first, I'll be in Maine in July, first week of July.
Which is also, well, Fourth of July lands on a Saturday.
Thanks for coming, Sean.
Good night, Sean.
Or what?
Fourth of July is a Saturday.
Friday.
Uh,
I prefer to have Peter here, so I'd go vote for, if we're
I
gonna
was
do one.
just gonna ask if you'd go with Shoops, okay,
I will, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy to fill,
yeah,
and to write it up,
no, I prefer to have
But
Peter here as well.
and it's not because I don't wanna write it up, it's because I think you bring value.
Well, I'd really not, I'd really like to not have to start the meeting from the library on Vinyl Haven. I'd
Yeah.
really like to just have my time and just,
Well, you know what, let's consider it a vacation week, so shall we go with the third Tuesday of July? Okay. Now August. First or third Tuesday.
hmm, I don't know, is July.
What does September look like?
I will disclose, I'm gonna be in Australia, New Zealand in September and October, so if we have important issues. I need to see those in the first part of September.
So August, we're looking at August 5th. I'm fine with going with August 5th.
Okay. Why don't we do that? And if we feel we need to have a second August meeting, we can make that decision on August 5th. First Tuesday of September is September 2nd, right after the Labor Day weekend. Who knows how that will pan out as well, but, there are 5 Tuesdays in September, so we have the 2nd and the 16th. Then there's the 23rd and the 30th, so we'll have a 3-week lull between, September 16th, October 7th. So somebody wanna make a motion to the effect that, our summer schedule will be, to meet the third Tuesday of July, the first Tuesday of August.
So moved. I'll second it.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Brace, to implement our summer schedule to be meet only on the third Tuesday of July and the first Tuesday of August. Any discussion? All in favor, Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Ms. Mayo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Any discussion on the coastal conference? Anybody able to attend? I was not able to attend.
wanted to,
and
but
so
I-
wanted to.
Too busy.
All right. Oh, quickly, I will mention that, I sent an email out to Erica Mooney about the conflict of interest complaints that were made and how we should deal with them. I've not heard back from her yet. I haven't given her much time. She's only had a couple of days to, process that, and of course, she's time. But I think it's safe to say that, with our 2 fishermen board members, when something arises, like the discussion of extending the scallop season. If it's going to benefit them, that they need to recuse themselves completely from the table, and as Mr. DeCosta suggested, go to the audience. I just want to clarify that they're able to participate in discussion by being an audience member. I think that would be, good if they could, because that's why we want fishermen on the board, to be able to share with us what they see, boots on the water. So our next meeting will be July 15th.
Good.
Anything anybody wants to add to our next agenda? If not, I will take, is there any, public comment? Motion to adjourn, somebody?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Ms. Mayo to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
All right.
Ms. Mayo. Chair votes aye as well. This meeting is adjourned 6:38 PM. Thank you, everyone, especially you, Tara, for having all the information that you always do.
Certain times.